We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite.
Captive is somebody or something that is captured or under the control of something else.
So soldiers who are captured by the enemy can be referred to as captives, right?
That's true. A company can be a captive. A captive company would be a company that's completely under the control of another company.
And also another term for captives, when especially referred in reference to Vietnam War, it was abbreviation POW, prisoner of war, right?
Right. Or if they're captured by paramilitary forces, or they're civilians, or if they got kidnapped, then they would be hostages.
Right, and hostages, just like captives, can be used figuratively. So, for example,
I could say, I don't want to be held hostage to old ideas.
or maybe parents who spoil their kids, you can give them advice not to become hostage to every whim and wish of their children.
That's correct. IBM has its own captive financial company who loans money to the customers, but only for IBM equipment. Well, a captive company is a company who only has one client. They're owned by it's sort of like a division of a company, but it has its own company name. They only have one client, and the client is the company. So typically you have a captive finance company. That's one of the most common. Game of Thrones holds me captive every time it comes on TV. I watch every show. In the IT world, it is very important not to be captive of old ideas, because the new is what usually wins, not the old.
As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow.
Peer means to look at something very carefully that's very difficult to see, almost like you're staring at something that you can't see very well. So somebody can say, don't peer at me, which means don't stare at me. Typically, you might say peer into the future. Every time I walk by his house, he peers at me out the window. The boss likes to peer at the women in the office, which they find very uncomfortable. As I try to peer into the future, I hope to discover something new. There was a sailboat race last weekend, so I peered out onto the lake and finally saw some of the sails. We started our picnic, but then I looked to the west. Then I peered to the west and saw storm clouds on the horizon. I checked the weather report, and it said it was going to rain, so I peered into the horizon to see if I could see the clouds.
As we peer into society's future, we, you and I, and our government must avoid the impulse to live only for today, plundering for our own ease and convenience the precious resources of tomorrow.
Plunder means to steal. Typically in war, when the armies come in, they plunder the resources of the captive people and the country that they take over.
Also, it can mean to rob or to pillage. Those are other two synonyms, correct?
That's correct.
And in times of war, or also in time of peace, but during disasters, like there is a flood or there is an earthquake, there are people, despicable people who are out and about looking for maybe valuable items and money in ruins.
That's correct.
And
Also,
typically that's a crime, right? There is a military police who is dispatched to stop. What is the name, by the way? There is another name for this.
it's looting.
Looting, right?
It's also called loot. When the new owners bought the company, they plundered the retirement fund, fired all the workers, and declared bankruptcy. When the banksters took over the company, they plundered the retirement fund. When the Roman army approached a city, unless the city surrendered, they plundered the city, kicked out the people, and destroyed all the buildings.
That's all for today. Tom Taylor is an ESL tutor. He teaches English in the United States and outside, all over the world using Skype. He can be reached at his website, which is
ESL-fullsteamahead.com.
click on this link and check out his website and email with questions. Thank you, Tom, and I'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.